Joining us now, Progressive Caucus Chair and Democratic Caucus Senior Whip, Washington Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Thank you so much for joining us. I know there's a lot of debate out there about what exactly went wrong. When you heard these answers from the people who responded to AOC, what was your takeaway?
Well, Katie, it's good to be with you. It's very similar to what I heard, what I've been hearing from voters over the last many years, and actually on the doors as well in swing districts and battleground states across the country for the 6 weeks before the election. People want us to address their economic issues. They are hurting, and they're angry that they're still in that place. And so I think clearly the Democratic message did not get through about what we were going to do on economic issues. I think also this question of trust and authenticity is really important. I have found this myself in a number of places, both in my district and my state, across the country with others, that when people feel like you are going to fight for them, you don't have to win every fight, but you do have to show them that you are going to fight. And taking on the system that is clearly rigged against working people, against poor people, they really want to see us doing that, and they don't see that. And so instead, in many cases, they were willing to choose somebody who they felt would at least blow up the system. So I think those are similar to what we've been hearing. And ultimately, I was interested in the fact that turnout in blue states really went down. And this goes to another thing that I feel like we have to address as a party, which is we just don't always think that our base is important, or kind of the natural base. And what ends up happening is we try to make ourselves, we try to out-Republican the Republicans. We try to move in a way that doesn't show enough contrast, and we lose a lot of people that would otherwise be with us. And so I think that's what we're going to see. But we're still looking at the numbers and really trying to figure out exactly what happened. And I do think it's a little bit different in each place as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're onto something with that. What I would say is, in talking to people, I live here in New York City. I live in Brooklyn, and it's a lot of Democrats in Brooklyn. And what I was hearing from folks about this election, Democrats, longtime Democrats, was that they felt that the Democratic Party, their priorities were kind of out of whack. They were frustrated with the Democratic Party for talking about social issues more than they were talking about economics. It felt like a place where you would get in trouble if you asked the wrong question. Do you get any sense of that? Is the Democratic Party, does it have a HR problem, the HRification of the Democratic Party, as one Atlantic writer says?
Well, I think that there has been a problem in getting everybody to really address the economic issues, because at the core, I think everything else can get answered. It's not, I've never believed that it's economic versus cultural, what we call cultural or social issues. It really is across the board. People care about being able to make a living. They care about being able to have a roof over their head. They care about the fact that they can't afford rent or childcare or groceries. That is really important. And they know that the wealthiest are getting the best end of the stick. And so they want to see Democrats taking that on. And I think a lot of times what happens is there's no contrast there. We can be against something, but what are we for? Yeah. Why have we not raised the minimum wage? Why have we not helped increase union density? Why were Democrats for NAFTA and trade agreements? This goes back. It's not just one election. It goes back. And I think we have lost a lot of working people and poor people who feel like the system is just not working.
Yeah,
and Democrats end up being institutionalists instead of willing to change the system.
So what stood in the way of getting that message out? I mean, the economy by the numbers got better. The Democrats were for union voters, by the way, voted for Kamala Harris, mostly, the majority did. Democrats have been for unions. They've been for raising the minimum wage, all of these things that would help working class voters. So what got in the way of that messaging? Why did working class voters not believe Democrats when the Democrats were arguing that they were the ones that were going to help them?
Well, we haven't passed any of those things. We don't have, I mean, minimum wage.
Well, neither have the Republicans, and they voted for the Republicans.
Yeah, but the difference is that we actually say that we're for workers. I don't think, I mean, maybe in this election there was some of that courting of that group of voters, but we don't say that we are for the billionaires. We say that we are for workers. We say that we are for working class. But over and over again, we haven't actually pushed that. And I'll tell you, a big part of the problem is the enormous money that is in these elections. And, we haven't talked about how people get their information. There's a whole ecosystem that is not you and I talking on this channel that is getting information to voters. And I think we haven't really figured out what that ecosystem is as a Democratic Party. But I just want to be clear, voters actually want the popular ideas that we have been pushing at the Progressive Caucus, certainly for quite some time. They went to the ballot in 3 states that voted for Donald Trump. They went around their state governments because they didn't believe state government delivered for them either. And they voted for higher minimum wage. They voted for paid sick leave. These were things that voters really want to see in their lives, even as they're voting for Donald Trump, because they believe that he is somebody who will blow up the system. And they don't know what's going to come next, but they certainly know that this system isn't working for them. But look, I think that we have a real choice here, and we have a fight that's coming up where we can showcase what the difference is. The GOP tax scam, those tax cuts, they're going to expire early next year or late next year. And early next year, we're going to be in the middle of this fight. And we have to make sure that we are clear and that there is every single Democrat, just like last time when Donald Trump was most unpopular, was around that Trump tax scam because people knew that the majority of those benefits went to the wealthiest.
But a lot of those benefits went to
a lot
of those benefits and the truth of it is a lot of those benefits went to the middle class. When people were going through their tax returns, they saw a benefit in their tax returns. It wasn't as good as the one the rich were seeing, but a lot of people in the middle class did see there have been stories on this, did see a bump in their tax returns. But I want to ask you about the ecosystem for a second.
Well, I have to push back on that, Katie, because the vast majority of those benefits went to the wealthiest top.
I'm not arguing with that. You're absolutely right about that, 100%. But people did see
but I don't want to compare
a better
crumbs
return.
and gold bars, right? I don't want to compare crumbs and make it seem like they're the same as gold bars.
No, I'm not
so
doing that.
So maybe you got groceries for 8 weeks, but did you actually get money that would help your family succeed? No, I don't think that's true. Whereas the wealthiest got even wealthier with the tax scam and increased the deficit substantially. The numbers for the deficit, by the way, will go up incredibly high if these tax cuts are extended. So let's just be clear that that tax scam did not help middle class families to really address the concerns that they have.